Okay, thanks for joining us today for our very first resistance roundtable hosted by Syngenta. I'm Les Glasgow. I'm the herbicide technical product lead for Syngenta, and I have responsibilities for resistance management strategies for Syngenta in North America. And today we'll be discussing early season weed control in the context of herbicide resistance management, and we're going to be discussing this with one or two members of our Resistance Fighter of the Year leadership program. We're hoping that Dr. Steve Powles from Australia, the director of the Australian Herbicide Resistance Initiative, will join us a little bit later. We're having some technical difficulties getting him connected, but we're hoping he's going to join. And we're also joined by Mr. Willie Vogt, who's editorial director for Farm Progress. So hello to everyone, and let's get started. Just as a little introduction, Syngenta introduced the Resistance Fighter of the Year leadership program in 2009, and this was a way to recognize proactive managers of herbicide-resistant weeds. And since then, it has expanded to include the other disciplines, so also includes concerns of resistance issues with insects, diseases, and nematodes. And really, this program is to facilitate information sharing. And the Resistance Fighter of the Year leadership program takes consultants, county extension agents, and other agronomists across the US and connects them with each other, and as well as with experts from around the world. And today we'll hear about what early season weed control problems growers are facing in their respective areas of the US, and what strategies they're recommending to manage those or solve those problems. Feel free to send us questions or comments during this roundtable discussion by tweeting using the hashtag ResistanceRT. So that's the word, all one word, ResistanceRT. And we'll do our best to address them as quickly as possible. But we've also dedicated time towards the end of this session to answer as many questions as we can. Now, the interesting thing about early season weed control is that it's often been focused primarily on the competition from weeds, the early competition. But today we're considering this in the context of herbicide resistance management, because the way I see it is that it's really a numbers game. It's about reducing the numbers early, maybe even pre-emergence, reducing the numbers that are emerging of weeds, and so that we can actually reduce the chance of encountering a resistant weed later. In other words, of finding a resistant mutation in a weed when we're putting on post-emergence. So it is a little different in the sense that it's addressing the resistance and the numbers of weeds that are emerging. So I'd like to introduce then Dr. Jason Weyrich, who's one of our most recent Resistant Fighters of the Year, and I'll ask him to give a little background and really to just talk a little about what he is seeing in the field at the moment. So, Jason, if you'd like to make a few comments.
All right, thanks, Les. I appreciate the introduction there. A little bit of background on myself. I'm the Director of Agronomy for MFA Incorporated out of Columbia, Missouri. And primarily right now we're facing water hemp breaking through our pre's. We put our pre's out somewhere around May 1st, ranging anywhere from May 15th. We started putting out pre's. We're starting to see those break. A lot of calls coming in right now on water hemp emerging. You know, we still haven't posted a lot of our corn, and we already got water hemp emerging our soybeans, so trying to dedicate sprayers across our company to the right acre. It's a little easier to control weeds and corn, as we know, than it is soybeans to date. So try to switch some of those sprayers to the herbicide program instead of running on the corn ground right now. So Water hemp submersion. One thing I do want to talk about is the fact that we've come from an era where we had no damage to our crops. We're in the Roundup Ready era. We had no phyto on our crops, and we've increased our rates in the state of Missouri and our surrounding areas in the South. We've gone to using full rates of pre-chemistry, full rates of post-chemistry, and using products besides glyphosate. And one thing I have struggled with telling our producers is the fact that the days of having no crop response from our herbicides is behind us. And as we increase these rates, it's either we're going to have little crop response and no weeds, or we're going to have no crop response and weeds. And for the most part, most of those guys are willing to take the crop response with that, and it seems to be working very, very well for us. I had a guy come in yesterday or call me yesterday, and I was on the phone with him, and we was talking about his pre-break, and he said, it should last 6 weeks. And I said, well, there's a lot of factors that go in how long those pre's last. He's like, well, the rep told me it lasts 6 weeks. I'm like, when did you put out your pre? And he said, May 1st. And I said, well, in my meetings, I always preach, 28 days to 30 days is all you're going to get. We're going to talk about the overlap and residual herbicide program, and that's the main thing that we've got to do is overlap those residual herbicides and make sure that we're keeping those weeds at bay, and we definitely don't want them going to seed. So that's kind of where we're at in the state of Missouri. Most of the corn's planted, soybeans are going in hot and heavy, but everything's going very, very well for us. We could use the rain.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks, Jason. That's great. I see that Joel has joined us. That's Joel Spring from Pella, Iowa. And Joel, I don't know whether you heard the introduction, but we're just asking for a few comments about what's happening locally, what you're seeing in the way of issues in the field at the moment. So, Joel, if you can give us a quick rundown of what's happening in Iowa, that'd be great. Joel, can you hear me? I think we've got a technical difficulty here.
Is it working now?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Right now, most of the corn is up and going, kind of that V4, V5 stage. The guys that are some corn, we're getting ready to start doing spraying here. Halex and second pasture start. Beans, we're still got late on the spraying the bean pre when the corn started going in the ground. That kind of went to the wayside, so we're trying to catch back up on it. Water hemp starting to get 3 to 4 inches tall, and a lot of fields that haven't had a pre on them yet. So far, Roundup still being able to handle it with, but we're still putting a lot of prefix out there. If we're going back in corn post that has water hemp in it, we're spraying some Clarity, trying to get that cleaned up and not relying on the Roundup to try to control our water hemp with the issue last year. Still have a few guys questioning whether they need a pre or not, especially getting beans that are up, thinking they've missed that window, but still trying to preach to them, get one, try to kill what's out there, get her in, get the pre-activated, and hopefully get another 4 to 5 weeks of clean fields out there and alleviate some of the issues that we saw last year in this area.
Okay. So what you're saying is growers actually missed the opportunity to put the pre on?
Yep. A lot of the growers, we spray most of the acres in our area. It was kind of a late spring, and about the time it got fit for us to start. I gotta take a phone call right quick. My boss keeps calling me.
Okay. A timely phone call there. Okay, we'll get back to Joel when he gets off his phone call. Unfortunately, we don't have Steve Powell's on, so we're hoping to get a view from Australia at this point. But I think, Willie, if you've got any questions at this point, I'll offer you an opportunity to ask a question or two.
Well, I can ask a question, but I think there's a couple of things I think people need to keep in mind, too, as we've looked at this resistance issue. You and I have talked about this in the past. It's so simple to knee-jerk to glyphosate, and we know it's a bigger problem than that. It just turned out that glyphosate was the one that brought it to everybody's mind. One of the things that changed this year is one of our magazines, Farm Futures, does a proprietary set of surveys with growers every year, and for the first time this year, resistance weeds ended up in the top 10 problems farmers think they'll face in agriculture, which I think puts it top of mind. And Jason, and I mean, when Joel comes back on, I had a question for him, but Jason, is there still an issue explaining to the grower that there's a resistance problem, or are they just on board and asking you how to make sure it doesn't happen for them?
Well, for the most part, most of our growers know they have a problem. You know, what confuses me is our growers go out there, you know, we'll put a half rate of a pre down. That's what they want to do. You know, instead of running a full rate pre, and then they'll come back and spend $65, $70 in a salvage treatment later in the season. So I think that, you know, we've had 2 or 3 years of that in our trade territory. We've gone after salvage treatments in soybeans. And so I think they're starting to realize that we do have a problem, starting to realize that, you know, what we've been telling them for the past 2 to 3 years as an industry as a whole is we're not feeding them a line and expecting them just to buy into it. So I think as far as the state of Missouri and our trade territory, we have done a very good job, university, industry as a whole, on educating resistance. So I think that the shift has actually happened in our trade territory and our footprint that we cover. And I think that, you know, we're still on that 3/4 rate. I can't quite get into that full rate quite yet, but we're getting there. And, you know, the 2-pass program, Dr. Bradley at the University of Missouri has done a very good job on preaching the 2-pass program. We have taken gangbusters with that as well right beside him and helping get that message out there. And it's quite surprisingly, it's taken off very, very well in soybeans, and the 2-pass program in corn is taking off very well as well.
Great.
Great.
Actually, B3, B4 though.
So, Willie, did you have any other question there?
Well, I think the other thing, I was surprised that he said they weren't doing a full rate of pre. Joel, I had a question for you. You said that you're still using glyphosate pretty regularly, or Roundup, whatever. But are you getting guys to try and mix it up in post?
Mostly post. A lot of guys were going out early post, about 30 days after emergence on soybeans, still running Roundup and trying to put another another residual out there, like an Outlook or Warrant type product. Some guys last year, when we started seeing the water hemp issues, went out with, some used Marvel, a lot of Plexstar, Cobras, Ultra Blazers. This area was one of the last ones that kind of switched to Roundup beans here several years ago, just because just the market reasons in this area. The Cobra years ago, and we found all this stuff. We didn't matter if it was 3 or 4 inches tall or 3 or 4 feet tall. We burned it back and it came right back out of it. So kind of our mindset in this area is to keep the stuff from even coming up, because the Cobras and the Blazers and the Plexstars just aren't reliable around here anymore.
But I mean, to open this up, but for the question, for those growers who don't have a major resistance problem, how do you go about persuading them to adopt, you know, the preventive treatments, if you like, to go with, you know, spend a little more on pre-emergence, to go to that 2-pass? How do you actually go about doing that?
A couple guys last year that were having, they didn't think they needed to spend the money, the extra $9 or $10 an acre on another residual. I just had them get in my pickup and I drove them to 3 fields that I had resistant issues on. I said, if we don't start doing the right thing, this is going to be your field in a few years. I said, even if you do the right thing, I said, your neighbor could screw it up for you and you'll get his weeds on your field. And I said, following. I said, it's here already, and I said, it's going to be your issue here in a year or two if we don't start doing something about it. And after they saw it in their neighborhood, they kind of got the idea, and all the conversation about the extra money per acre kind of went to the wayside. Now it's about, let's do things right. You know, we spend another $15, $20 an acre on residual chemicals. That's 1 to 2 bushel of soybeans. We'll more than pay for that, and the extra yield we'll keep.
Right. So, I mean, so you're basically using examples of the disaster. I mean, you aware of people, I mean, Jason, I can ask that question of you. Have you seen people who've adopted this, what's probably a low-key, not hugely expensive program, combining the pre's with an early post? Have you seen examples of people actually doing that and being successful with it?
Yeah, there's definitely examples of some of our leaders out there. most of the guys that are involved in the local level on the state boards or United Soybean Board, they're very aware of the resistance issue. Those are some of our early adopters. They're out there preaching the message as well. I'd almost contest coming from Mississippi. Most of the time when somebody's going to adopt is after they've had a train wreck in their field. Now, we can educate, we can go out there and show pictures, we can go out there and show them, demonstrate the issues that we've had in other fields to the south. This is just kind of creeping north, and like Willie said, to start with glyphosate, we've got other issues out there. You want to talk about HPPD, PPO, ALS. I mean, nothing's new here. But if we think about that, the paradigm shift for a grower is typically whenever we have a wreck in their field or close to them. And we had that 2 years ago here, 3 years ago it was dry. We put some pre's out that didn't get activated. We come back, we're spending $60, $70 on a salvage treatment. We had 5, 6 chemicals going in the tank at one time, and we're seeing a significant response in our beans. And I think that's really when it woke up for the whole state of Missouri. We've had resistant weeds here since 2005 as far as water hemp. And so 2005, 7, it's just been growing, and it's just continuing to grow. So, it's all nice to say, we're going to take them and show them fields, and that's what's going to shift their mind. But really, when it comes down to their checkbook, the high commodity prices has helped. We're looking at, $12, $13, $14 beans. That's helped quite a bit. You're talking about a bushel of beans, preventing early season weed control. That program, done by the University of Nebraska. A lot of that weed competition work has been done for a long time, and it's pretty easy sell on that side, keeping the early season weed competition out. And one thing I'd like to talk about, Les, is, we was in the Roundup Ready era. I guess I would call myself, I've heard people say glyphosate baby, if you will. I'm not that old. That's pretty much all I know. And I can tell you
on like Willie.
On my farm in Colorado, we still pretty much Roundup Ready corn, and that's pretty much all they spray. So if I think about that, and we've been running glyphosate for years now, and now all of a sudden we're asking them to go back to using residuals, and I sit there and tell them that, in the past 10 to 12 years, we were losing yield by letting weeds come up in our crops, because we would always, at home, wait for another flush of weeds to come.
Mm-hmm.
Wait for that rain to come in a week. It's going to rain. We'll go out there, we'll let that water hemp or pigweed get a little bit bigger. I can get it with glyphosate. We were losing yield at that point, and I can show you the data to prove that early season competition was dragging us down, and so that's the way I go about trying to talk to producers, is controlling that early season weed competition, reducing that yield loss, and doing the right thing, like Joel said, is the best thing that we can do.
Mm-hmm. We hear a lot about Palmer amaranth or Palmer pigweed. Joel, have you seen any sign of that? I think they've found it in Iowa, haven't they? Have you seen any of it around in your area?
We haven't seen it in our area yet. It's been documented in a county southeast of here, 2 counties down. I imagine it's just a matter of time before, if it's not this year, I'm sure next year. And it's more than likely probably already here. It just probably hasn't been identified yet. It's just been called water hemp by the most part. So I trying to educate people. It's something to be respected but not feared, and just another reason on make sure we run the right chemical programs and keeping this stuff from coming up.
Okay. What about you, Jason? You seen any sign of Palmer amaranth in your area?
That's an interesting question. Every year I get a few pictures. I see something that looks a little odd for the trade area where we're at. Now, there are several counties documented basically along the Missouri River north, and I know up in the southern 2-tier counties of Iowa, I've been walking fields, and we've seen Palmer amaranth or crosses in those fields. I pretty much, the recommendation for the program is not going to change based on water hemp or Palmer. I do use scare tactics. I don't know if you call it scare tactics, but I do talk about how big they can get. I've seen, spindles on cotton pickers, break from, pigweed getting, that big or bigger, And so I do talk about that. I do show pictures. My time I spend in the Boot Hill, Missouri, that's what they have. That's the predominant species is Palmer amaranth there. And then I come up here and these guys are talking about water hemp. And, I kind of call that the sissy water hemp, if you will. But it deserves its respect, too, because, it may not get as big, but I've seen it very, very thick, and it causes lots of issues with our growers. It doesn't get the height capabilities of what Palmer does. But what I'm seeing is some crosses out there. I don't know what they are. The amaranth species gives us the ability to do that, or they have the ability to do that. And so that's something I find pretty amazing of that species, is the adaptability that it has. And,
right.
If you look at what's going on in Michigan with Christy Sprague, and they found it up there, in Michigan, and it just goes to show that it can live pretty much about anywhere. So I have no problems or have no expectations of it not reaching farther north into the Missouri or Midwest.
Well, the interesting thing was that species came out of the desert.
Yeah.
It seems quite happy up in the north, and it'll survive the winter. Maybe not as healthy as the south, but certainly will survive. Willie, do you have any other comments or questions?
Well, I think the comment on Palmer is that everybody in every state should be aware of it, but I think Jason hit it on the head. The recommendation doesn't change. You need an aggressive residual pre-emergent program, which every major crop protection company besides, along with Syngenta, is recommending now. Right. Pick your brand, there's the program, and that Palmer's out there. I mean, it's been documented in Wisconsin now, south of Janesville, because I was with Vince Davis at Commodity Classic, and he brought that up. He's the extension weed specialist there, right. And we can, and I like Jason's scare tactics. I mean, you bring up a good point. I mean, I think I was talking to Clint Einspar last year or year before last, and we were talking, when you talk about a pre-emerge program and you talk about a post-emerge program, 2-pass, 2.5-pass, whatever you're thinking about, I always ask you guys, how do you make sure that doesn't sound like you're trying to get a boat payment from the customer? And I think that's part of the challenge, that they're like, well, he's just trying to rack up on me. But the truth is, and it's sad to hear, Jason, that you got to have a break for a guy to pay attention, but I guess that's just how we're all wired in agriculture. It's not my problem until it's my problem.
Yeah.
So that's part of the cycle. You know, Les, you didn't talk about this, and I don't know how Jason and Joel look at this, but the idea of the whole weed seed bank, which is Dr. Powell's deal. How do you guys look at that, and do farmers even relate to that idea of like reducing how many weed seeds might actually be out there? Or Jason, is that just too darn theoretical for these guys?
Willie, you bring up a good question there. You know, I worked in the boot hill with Bob Scott and Dr. Ken Smith and those guys, and you know, the seed bank thing was pretty well alive in the States, and, you know, not just in Australia. You know, in Australia they've got these machines that they pull behind the combines where all the chaff and the seed goes in and incinerates. I mean, it's just amazing what they have to do over there to fight the weed species they have. And fortunately today, you know, if I look at what's going on in our trade territory, if I look at the Boot Hill, Missouri, and cotton country, you know, we've seen chopping crews going there for the past 3-4 years now chopping cotton. You know, it can be economical depending on how thick they are, not letting them go to seed. Now, I think some of the pictures from North Carolina, David Jordan, and those guys out there have shown some pictures of guys throwing them on trailers and hauling them into the field, you know, and that's what we have to do to get the weed seed out of the field if they get in there too late. Now, most response I get, now I show that same picture. You see all the chemical companies show that picture. It's all listed by who, you know, Alan York, you know, it's got his name at the bottom of it. And we see that picture out there, and it's made its way around. And we talk about it, but I don't think that people understand the realization that that's what they have to do. If they don't control them, they don't get the reins in a timely fashion to activate those pre's, the options they have are very limited. And that's exactly what they have to do. Now, in the Boot Hill, Missouri, those guys were chopping the weeds and leaving them in the rows. That was 2 years ago. And what was happening is they would get a rain, and those pigweeds, they would root back down and then turn around and come right back. So now we've actually seen that in our trade territory where they're going out there, throwing them on trailers and hauling them into the field, in cotton and as well as in beans. Now, there's also another thing that, you know, I find interesting, and Ken Smith he was very good to me when I was there. Their recommendations of putting disc in a field, I had to make that recommendation in Central Missouri last year, and the producer laughed at me when I made that recommendation. And I said, I'm being honest with you. I said, we're June 1st. You know, we put our pre out. We didn't get a rain to activate. I said, you've got more water hemp here than you do soybeans. I said, the best thing we could do would be to put a disc in the field and start over. You know, and he laughed at me. Well, he caught me last year at a producer meeting I was doing, and he said, I wished I would have listened to you. I harvested 4 bushel the acre off of that farm, and he went in there with salvage treatments, and he said, I wished I would have listened to you and done that. But we are in a realization where we've had problems, and I would say it goes up in the southern 2-tier counties of Iowa where our trade territory stops. We are in the realization area, Willie, that we understand the issues we were at, we understand the issues we're facing, and we don't have to go very far to show them those fields. You know, like Joel said, they just got to look across the fence row and see what's going on. So managing the seed bank, you know, that is very crucial to getting ahead of this weed. Now, one guy asked me, he says, now if I manage the seed bank for 5 years, you know, longevity of the pigweed seed in the soil, 5-6 years, on the top inch, whatever. They just been showing out there. If I have guys ask me, they say, if I control pigweed for 5 years on my farm, am I going to eliminate pigweed on my farm? And the answer is no.
No.
They're going to be there. They're going to get transferred in from birds. They're going to be in combines. You're going to pick up a few off the turn row. But the main goal is to reduce that population out there and control the ones that we can and do the right thing. One thing that people don't understand or they get confused on is how much rain does it actually take to activate these pre's. If we don't get the time they rained 2 years ago, we put out a lot of pre's. We didn't get rains. We were coming back in trying to post. We just didn't have very good luck. We were in a drought, had a very dry year. So it's different than the glyphosate era. I kind of bounce all over the board, but it's different. We kind of have to have rain to help us out in Mother Nature in that sense,
Right.
to help manage that seed bank. It all kind of ties together on that seed bank. And I think it is viable in the U.S. as long as we kind of all get on the same page and work together on this as an industry as a whole.
Okay. Thanks, Jason. Joel, any comment on the seed bank message and managing, so that the seed bank is not increased?
It's starting to be talked about around here, but hasn't been a big deal yet, just because last year's really the first year we started seeing issues with resistant weeds. Where we've started to really see it, a lot of this area is one pass corn, a full rate, either right behind the planter or right after it comes up. Normally, we've been able to hold the field, especially in corn. That's what we've been running. Been keeping them clean, but the last 3 years, as much rain as we've had early, the residuals haven't held on in the corn. We've had to post spray a lot, but I think a lot of it is our weed seed bank is getting so high that it's just overwhelming our chemicals anymore. So a lot of guys this year, we've switched to a 2-pass chemical in corn just because we haven't been able to keep their fields clean like they like to. Where we've seen the water hemp issues in beans last year, I think we had issues the year before in corn. But if you see, a farmer doesn't realize, well, I have 5 or 6 water hemp in this area last year in the corn, didn't really notice it when I was harvesting it, put it through the combine, blew it out the back, and now I have millions of seeds in that area. All of a sudden he has an issue now, but didn't remember seeing the issue last year just because you don't see it in corn like you do with soybeans. And
right. Well, I think that's a great point. Since these amaranthus species, these pigweeds, can produce 500,000 up to 1 million seeds if they're not, being competed with.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take too many plants in a field to, put a lot back into the seed bank, certainly.
Yeah, I got a couple buddies that farm in northeast Arkansas, and they started seeing this issue 5, 6, 7 years ago, and he started sending me pictures. And he said the first year it was 2 or 3 in the field. He said we figured it was just a weather issue or we'd missed it with the sprayer. Said the next year it was 15 to 20. He said in the year after that it was the whole field. He said it's just a gradual progression about over 3 or 4 years how it starts off, and it doesn't look like much, and you think it's just an environmental issue to where it becomes a disaster in just a few years.
Do people ever, or growers I should say, if they see just a few plants, would they go in and pull them out? like an early intervention?
A few guys do. Most of them don't worry about it yet. It's a conversation we're got to have guys this year on, hey, you need.
Lost you. We lost you there, Joel.
It's a bandwidth issue, I think. There he is.
Nope. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, we're starting to talk with guys about that, and it's if we miss the weeds now, it's more than likely it's not that we missed them with the sprayer, it's that we have an issue in the field, and we need to be getting those out before they start producing seed and become an even bigger issue the next year.
Right. Okay. Willie, any other questions at this point?
Well, Jason mentioned that his guys were using a half rate or a 3/4 rate of pre. Joel, are your guys economizing around Pella too?
For the most part, we run a lot of prefix, starting to run boundary in this area, a lot of authority first. I think the full rate on authority first is like 6 to 8 ounces. When we first started off, we were running 3 ounces of authority first and getting by with it. We've bumped guys up to 4 ounces on that, which is still kind of a half rate. But guys are a little hesitant on spending that much money per acre. But we've talked to guys using like the 4 ounces of authority first, coming back with 3 pints of warrant post, and try to overlap them that way. And instead of spending a bunch of money up front, we spend about the same amount of money, but later on in the year, trying to get by that way.
That's Joel again.
Here in this next year or two, and I just hope we don't get back to the competition of let's see how big a weed we can kill, because I'm fearful we'll burn that chemical out in 3 or 4 years, 5 years top, and then we have no tools. After we burn that chemistry out, we mine for a while.
We lost you a little bit. Were you talking about the new auxin chemistries coming, the 2,4-D and the dicamba chemistries? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, yep. I talked to a producer a little further north that actually raised several hundred acres of dicamba beans for Monsanto last year, and he says it's just like Roundup used to be. He says you can kill anything, and and it's that day you can see it being killed. And I'm fearful, guys, when that technology does come out, that some guys will get back in that mindset. Well, we just have to spray it once. We'll let everything come up, and we're going to run the same course like we did with Roundup and burn that out. And then our options are gone once we burn those chemistries out.
But I believe those companies are really stressing the need for the 2-pass program involving those. I mean, they're not going to rely totally on that for post-emergence weed control, but it's part of a program, certainly.
Yeah. I just hope our customers take our word on, we still need to be doing the right things, and this is just another tool in the toolbox to help fight the issues. It's not the thing we're going to use. It's just another tool that we're going to use to help fight the issues that we're seeing.
Right. Good. Jason, any comment on that?
Well, that's a whole nother toolbox. We could talk for hours on that. There's several things that concern me with the new chemistries coming down the pipeline, and not just the auxins. I mean, MFA, we cover a large footprint. We have a lot of custom maps. So I'm very concerned with drift. I'm very concerned with tank contamination. I'm very concerned with those getting in the wrong fields, for one. 2,4-D dicamba, they're 2 different chemistries. They're 2 different things. We custom apply. A farmer comes and says, I got that new auxin type chemical. Well, which one is it? We get in the wrong field. Dicamba is going to kill 2,4-D beans. 2,4-D is going to kill dicamba beans. We know that. Graveyard dead and pretty fast. And in our trade territory, we also have a lot of fruits and grapes and a lot of vineyards. A lot of people like to drink wine now, and so we have a lot of vineyards around. And driftwatch.org is very important. We've been educating our applicators to get on there and see what's around them, find their surroundings. Even now, watching driftwatch.org, I don't want to buy somebody's vineyard or a garden or anything. So it's a website where they can go in there and log what they have on there. What really that concerns me from resistance, just like Joel said, going back to the way that we were. Now, one of the bigger things and that concerns me because it works so well is the HPPD classic chemistry. We got the balanced bean coming. You've got the HPPD bean classic chemistry coming from Syngenta and Bayer. What I'm afraid of is that chemistry works very, very well in corn. We know how to use it. Matter of fact, we abuse it most of the time in situations. In the state of Missouri, Dr. Bradley did a survey of weeds this past year, found a couple populations of some HPPD tolerant water temp 2 labeled rates now, not 2x or 3x or 4x, but 2 labeled rates of some HPPD classic chemistry, if I'm correct on that. So that is very concerning for me, because if we lose that classic chemistry in corn, what are we going to have left? And we start bringing that into soybeans. It's okay for us to come out and say this is the management style programs, but ultimately the producers are the ones with the checkbook. They're the ones deciding what program is going to work best for them. And it's all about educating and letting them know what the risks are, the pros and cons of each program. So yeah, I'm excited for these new technologies that come down the pipeline. But as an agronomist and somebody that walks the complaint calls from our sprayers getting in the wrong fields or drifts, it makes me stay up at night a little bit on how many calls we're going to go on, especially the dicamba and 2,4-D and getting confused. And
right.
just different issues with that. So, and both companies have made strides on reducing the volatility. I guess the volatility is the smallest part of my concern. Of the concerns I have, volatility is the smallest concern I have. Tank contamination, drift, and getting in the wrong field, that type of problems is my biggest concern.
Okay.
Guys are good with the bulk fill planters, switching fields late at night, and they'll just be dumping boxes in, and it's bad enough now trying to remember if they got Liberty corn or Roundup corn, and that, it's going to be an issue. Yeah. We're going to kill fields in a few years.
Right. Well, I think you hit the nail on the head, Joel. It's going to be more complex, to say the least. I think gone are the Roundup Ready days when it was a very simple, multiple applications of glyphosate products on corn and soybeans. We're going back to the days, or maybe forward to the days when there's more complexity, and I think obviously these new traits will add another degree of complexity. But certainly from a Syngenta standpoint, and I'll reiterate what I said about the other companies, it's going to be part of a program. And I think there was some recent agreements under the Herbicide Resistance Action Committee, which is an industry committee, and a working group under that on HPPD resistance, where there was an agreement that these products should not be used alone, that we should use them in mixture with an effective herbicide. So in other words, put something else in there, with a different mode of action that is going to provide activity on that species that is of concern. Well, it would be multiple species, but I think that's really a step in the right direction, where we're going to try and ensure that we preserve the tools, we preserve these HPPD inhibitors. So that was a good agreement among the manufacturers that this is the way forward, at least, which would include the residual aspects as well, residual herbicides as well applied. So we're hoping to move in that direction. I think probably, unless we've got some questions come in at this point, just a few final words from everybody. I'm particularly interested in what's happening out there now, as far as with the winter that we've had. It's been really strange, dry in some places and cold in other places. It's been almost continuously wet. So I'd like, if you wouldn't mind, just give a few comments, Jason, if you want to go first.
Well, we had a crazy winter here. We had a lot of places where we couldn't turn a key pretty much all winter. We didn't get much anhydrous on in the fall. But as far as talking about resistance and weeds, and the problems we're going to face going into the future, and that's going to be carryover. Okay, we talk about how dry it's been in our trade territory, cold winter, slowing down microbes in the soil, breaking down those chemicals. We've seen some Authority XL carryover, some Sonic carryover, some prefix carryover. Typically on the overlap areas where turn rows, where it's compacted, that's really the first tell sign of seeing some of these issues. And most of the time our corn blows through it. So that's some of the issues that we're facing right now, is dealing with those carryovers from last year. And it goes back to what we talked about earlier. That's going to be part of the game. Weeds or a little bit of damage on our crops. We're going back to what it was in the 90s now. I don't remember when it was in the 90s. I don't remember what it looked like in the 90s. But going back to that time frame, what I hear, I learned in school reading books and that type of situation. So
history books, yeah.
Yeah, history books, they make those, and so. But as far as the weeds go, we had a late year. We didn't start seeing water hemp emerging here till April 24th, April 20th, somewhere in there. Mare's tail is a big issue for us. It doesn't get talked about a whole lot, but we see a lot of problems with mare's tail. A lot of the programs we're going out there with Sharpen, 2,4-D, Gramoxone, Syncor, those type of products. Sometimes they work, sometimes they weren't working. So the winter we had, we don't know if that's a winter annual weed or just a year-round weed anymore. It just seems to germinate whenever the heck it wants.
Right.
So, but overall, the winter, we had a dry winter. We've seen some carryover issues. We've had a decent spring getting everything in. We had some decent rains to get everything activated. And I would say as a whole right now we're sitting in pretty good shape in our trade territory as far as Missouri and eastern Kansas, southern Iowa.
Good. Excellent. Thanks, Jason. That's great. Joel, any wrap-up comments you'd like to make?
Kind of what Jason was talking about. We had a cold but a fairly dry winter. My area here in Pella that got a good start. That first April got a lot of anhydrous put on. Then the floodgates opened up, and we got about since the middle of April, we've had about 12 plus inches of rain right through here. So we've really recharged the soil profile. All the corn is in. I think it's almost all up. A few fields got planted in the last week this weekend. A lot of the beans are coming up now. We've had good rains. Since planting started, we've had good, not heavy rains, but good rains to get the chemicals into the ground and activated and working. Hopefully, we're still spraying a lot of freeze and early post on beans with the residuals. Hope still get the rains to keep them activated. But right now, everything's looking really good in this area. Southern Iowa, northern Missouri, where I farm back home with Dad on the Iowa-Missouri border at Centerville. This is as good as the crop has looked in about 7 or 8 years. It's finally we've kind of finally had a dry spring at home, and even some of the tougher dirt, we got perfect corn stands that we haven't had in a lot of years. And just pray that we get blessed with a good crop, and we keep getting the rains that we need that have been shut off the last few Julys and August. So we're set up for a good year, and hopefully everything keeps going well.
Okay, great. Thanks, Joel. Willie, any final comments?
I think just to reiterate a couple things and maybe summarize. One, the simple ship has sailed. You can't think you're doing weeds the simple way anymore. We go back prehistory apparently for Jason and go back to the way we used to do it. The other side too, though, is that this mode of action, side of action issue is a critical issue, and I think guys like Jason and Joel are telling that story. That helps, because no matter how hard you're working at Syngenta or name your crop protection company, I don't know of any new side of action that's been found yet. There are some new families of herbicides in the same sites of action that work a little different, but we're not finding any new modes of action right now, so we need to make sure we protect the ones that we have. And Jason made the comment that guys don't do anything until they have a break. My concern is that the best way to manage weed resistance is to act like you always have it and just pre-emerge, two-pass program, and then you won't have it at all.
Right. Well said.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think unless anybody's got any other further comments, I'd just like to say thank you. I've found this a very interesting discussion, and I hope we can do it again and find out how the season has gone for you all. So thank you, Jason, thank you, Joel, and thank you, Willie, for participating. It's been a very interesting discussion, and hope I can get out to see maybe one or two of you this season, see what's happening out there in the field.
Yeah.
Thanks again.
Don't see any weeds with you.